For with a country as with a person, what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? That if this noble view of the rights of man was to flourish, it must be rooted in democracy. The most basic right of all was the right to choose your own leaders. The history of this country, in large measure, is the history of expansion of that right to all of our people. Experience has clearly shown that the existing process of law cannot overcome systematic and ingenuous discrimination. No law that we now have on the books, and I have helped to put 3 of them there, can ensure the right to vote when local officials are determined to deny it. In such a case, our duty must be clear to all of us. But experience has plainly shown that this is the only path to carry out the command of the Constitution. To those who seek to avoid action by their national government in their home communities, who want to and who seek to maintain purely local control over elections, the answer is simple. Open your polling places to all your people. The command of the Constitution is plain. There is no moral issue. It is wrong, deadly wrong, to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country. There is no issue of states' rights or national rights. There is only the struggle for human rights. This time, on this issue, there must be no delay or no hesitation or no compromise with our purpose. We cannot, we must not refuse to protect the right of every American to vote in every election that he may desire to participate in. And we ought not, and we cannot, and we must not wait another 8 months before we get a bill. But even if we pass this bill, the battle will not be over. What happened in Selma is part of a far larger movement which reaches into every section and state of America. It is the effort of American Negroes to secure for themselves the full blessings of American life. Their cause must be our cause too. Because it's not just Negroes, but really it's all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice. And we shall overcome.
Welcome to the Armwood Opinion channel here on YouTube. I haven't been on for a little while, a couple of weeks, And today we're going to be talking about why we must be relentless in our fight for voting rights. Why do I say that? This past week, we saw Joseph Biden give a relatively impassioned speech on voting rights. But the thing that immediately jumped out to me, and then afterwards to the commentators I saw on the evening of the speech, is that Joe Biden did not talk about the most important obstacle to the voting new voting rights bills, SB1 and SB4, the Voting Rights Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill. And that is in the Senate, the filibuster. He didn't talk about the filibuster. And that is unbelievable. And I don't mean unbelievable in the fact that it's not believable. It's just outrageous, is what I really should have said. It's outrageous. Because we all know, who are following the story, that the reason that we can't get voting rights legislation passed is because the Senate has an anti-majoritarian rule saying that basically have to get 60 votes to overcome the objection of senators to a particular bill. And there should be a 51 vote out of 101 majority to pass any bill. But this has been a tool which has been used all through the 1960s in particular to obstruct civil rights legislation. And voting rights is a civil right. It's a human right. We have seen Democrats oppose the getting rid of the filibuster because they're afraid of what it might do to them. And when the Republicans are in power. But what they fail to acknowledge is that right now, the most important thing before our nation is not preserving the filibuster, which is not part of the Constitution, it's just an arbitrary Senate rule, doesn't exist in the House of Representatives. The most important thing is preserving the 15th Amendment, the right to vote, the equal right to vote. The Civil Rights Act of 1965, known as the Voting Rights Act, was passed through Congress with the strong support of Lyndon Johnson. He said it must be passed. It's an issue of human rights. But since then, the Republican appointed Supreme Court, justices appointed by George Herbert Walker Bush, judges appointed by Donald Trump, have sought to gut the Voting Rights Act, and they have succeeded. The pre-clearance provisions of Chapter 4, Roberts ruled unconstitutional in the Shelby case. And just recently, Alito ruled that the Voting Rights Act would to bring a case against it, you basically would have to prove intentional discrimination. That neutral role rules that have disparate impact, which is the disparate impact test in constitutional law, would not be sufficient to invoke court intervention. This is insane. In the heights of Jim Crow, the laws were neutral on their face, but they were used to discriminate against black voting because the people who were administering the rules had the leeway to make subjective judgments, like claiming my grandfather could not vote because he couldn't read Latin after he had read and explained the Constitution and answered all their questions. They just didn't want him to vote. So this is the problem. We can look back to President Johnson's speech in early 1965 demanding that Congress pass the Voting Rights Act. I remember it as clear as day. My mother made me sit down and watch it with her, and I remember President Johnson, Lyndon Baines Johnson, we call LBJ, at one point of the speech, actually a couple of times, saying, "We shall overcome," the anthem of the civil rights movement, and showing his determination that Congress pass this bill. Biden didn't do anything like that. He didn't. The major obstacle is the filibuster. What if he was a good man? What he would have done, and if he was a sincere man, he would have called for getting rid of the filibuster. He didn't mention it. Yeah, I thank my parents for making me watch like the Johnson speech in 65 and other political speeches and explain my questions when I wanted to know what goes on. I know so many people did not have the advantages that I did in that. We have to remember that Joe Biden, I once heard a black person call him Uncle Joe during the campaign, and I was sickened to my stomach. Joe Biden has never been a friend of black people. Now, some people may disagree with me. Go right ahead. But I remember when he first was elected at the age of 29 to the Senate that he opposed busing for school integration, which was pushed by every major black civil rights organization. I can remember going to an NAACP convention in 1968 where former Chief Justice Earl Warren was the keynote speaker. And on the cover of the brochure, it was saying, entitled, "It's not the buses, it's the niggers." They opposed busing for integration of the schools because the schools' funding was unequal. The schools' resources were unequal. Segregated schools were not equal. Separate was never equal. Plessy versus Ferguson, the separate but equal case in 1898, was a lie. Joe Biden sided with Southern segregationists in opposing busing, while white people were spitting and beating up school children in Boston. I will never forget it because I experienced that in the fall of 1962 in New York City when I was bused and I was called nigger for the first time. When I had to come home and ask my father what the word meant. When Miss Cooper, my school teacher, refused to let me participate in the class election. I was the only black child in the class. And she said, the bus children are not ready to participate in class elections. This is the kind of racism that goes on when you don't have political leadership. when you have people that support segregation. E.J. Dionne, who's a columnist who writes for the Washington Post, and he's a white man, a good man. He put it like this past week. Biden's speech assailing merchants of fear and peddlers of lies was refreshingly candid about threats to democracy, like Trump has been engaging in. They include the violent January 6th attack on the Capitol, Donald Trump's scandalous falsehoods about the 2020 election. The big lie is just a big lie, Biden said, and the mobilization of that lie to rationalize voter suppression. The law right here in Georgia, put through by the Assembly, and that horrible governor we have, and dumb governor, Brian Kemp, who tried to be Trump's puppy dog, and he kicked him to the curb. It was funny during the past year. These people and the people in Republicans in Texas and Arizona and 46 other states have passed or tried to pass legislation in the state assemblies that suppresses the vote. E.J. Dionne goes on to say, yet he declined, speaking of Biden, to take the next logical step. Or if matters are as urgent as Biden said they are, there is no excuse, none, not to alter the Senate's filibuster rule, which is getting in the way of legislation to protect voting rights, to block gerrymandering. Gerrymandering goes back to an old congressional district in Massachusetts where they cut out a district to disenfranchise voters, and the thing looked like an animal with arms and limbs, the district. It was carved out to cut out people who they didn't want to be in a particular district. And, he says, make access to the ballot convenient for every voter nationwide. I know I'm a disabled senior citizen. I don't want to wait on long lines in the hot sun to vote. Last year, I used a drop box that was open 24 hours. There was a camera there, so there wouldn't be any funny business. I posted pictures of me voting in it online on a Sunday. They've changed the rules so they can't have those voter drop boxes except inside polling places. It makes no sense except to suppress votes. They're only open during regular voting hours or early voting hours. So if you work a day shift, you're younger, not a retiree like me, you can't get in there. And it's just, and you work at, this is just horrible. They also changed the rule that the state attorney general is not in charge of voting, but the state assembly. That means that Republican-controlled assemblies, like in Georgia, can play with the vote, as Donald Trump tried to get the Secretary of State of Georgia to do, Ratsberger, but thankfully he didn't do it. We heard the phone call. This is the kind of thing Republicans are doing. But Biden still holds back. And Senators Joe Manchin, who is bought and paid for by lobbyists, and Arizona Senator Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin is from West Virginia, they are refusing to get rid of the filibuster too. No one knows precisely how to get these senators to move, and people are trying. But Biden needs to understand that whether America goes back fully into a second Jim Crow or not is on his head. We put Joe Biden in office. He lost the white vote. Our overwhelming vote for him in both the primaries, particularly in South Carolina, after Congressman Joe Clyburn gave the signal to do it, and then in the general election, got him where he is. As my mother used to say all the time, my long departed mother, he who pays the piper calls a tune. And we are demanding, we're not asking, we're demanding that Joe Biden push the Democrats in the Senate, including Manchin and Sinema, to support getting rid of the filibuster. What do we need to do? As many people are calling for, there's an organization, Black Votes Matter, which has been engaging in demonstrations, is we need to get in the streets and demonstrate like crazy. We also need to lobby legislators like crazy, drive them crazy. We elected 2 progressive Democratic senators here in Georgia. We know where they stand. But in other states like Virginia and Arizona, we need those senators, voters, their constituents, to go to their offices, sit in, do whatever is necessary to make them uncomfortable. We need Joe Biden to lit a fire under their derrieres. We need pressure, pressure, pressure. That is what I have to say today. Am I angry? Oh yeah, I'm angry. I've never liked Joe Biden since he first was elected to the Senate at the age of 29 when I was in college. He never has been on the side of black people except when it benefits him. And he demonstrated this week that he can talk, but he's a man of no action when it counts. So we have to put some fire under him. And we may need in 2024 a primary challenge. Okay, folks, have a good day. And remember that resistance is not futile. We will win if we resist. Have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video. Hit the like button if you like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more progressive political content like this, more educational content like this, and make a phone call to your senator and to President Joe Biden's office and tell them to end the filibuster.